Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Our Home Ground, where the women's game feels personal and powerful. And we talk about all the things in the women's game, mostly off the pitch. And I'm just very excited to be recording another episode. And I am very hopeful that I'll be back on my normal schedule after a very hectic December and January. But I am home now, which is what we'll be talking a lot about today. So hopefully it'll be back to regularly scheduled programming, and hopefully I'll be able to get my life back together enough to be able to get more incredible guests. I've been thinking a lot about what I want this podcast to be and what I want to do with it. And so I will hopefully be getting back to the guests because I think that was like a really fun and important part of it that I really enjoyed because I like hearing from other people in the game. And I think I I think I want to make a little bit of an effort to try to grow it. And that feels like a very vulnerable thing to say, but I'm putting it out there into the world because why not? You got to go for it, you know? But before we dive into like the soccer of it all, I first want to acknowledge the state of the United States at the moment and all of the atrocities happening, especially in Minnesota, but sort of across the United States with ICE and all of the ridiculousness of it all. I don't even have the words for it really, and so I'm not gonna go super into it, but just know that if you're unaware, which I'm sure nobody is unaware, the US government is attacking, kidnapping, and murdering its own citizens and potentially like people who are here legally. I don't even have the words for it. I get so worked up about it that I just like lose all ability to speak. Just know I'm pissed. I'm trying to figure out personally what I can do about it, how I can be most helpful. And it just feels so weird for life to continue to go on. Like I still wake up and go to work. I went on this fabulous trip to the London area and had the best week while all of this was happening. And so trying to navigate what it means to have all of these things happening at once is I think more than actually what the human is supposed to be able to do. So there's that. But I just want to acknowledge it's wrong. I hate it. I don't support any of this. To those of you who are scared and worried and anxious, I see you. I'm with you. I can hardly even imagine how my friends of color, those people of color in the United States that I don't know how they're even like getting out of bed in the morning. So, yeah, I don't know what to say other than it's disgusting. It's awful. This is not who we are. It's not who we claim to be. It is actually who we are in this moment. And how we move on from here, I'm not exactly sure, but we have to be better. I'm not really sure how to transition out of that. So I am now awkwardly laughing. But here we go into today's episode. It's going to be a bit of a catch up and discussion about my trip over to England because that's the only thing I'm thinking about right now. I actually am recording this on Tuesday. I got home yesterday evening at like 5:30. So I was there for 10-ish days. I left the US on Friday and I came out back on Monday. So like 10-ish days. Um, and basically the only thing I did was soccer or football related stuff, other than I just keep looking at it. So I'm just gonna say it. I got this tattoo, actually, and this tattoo while I was there. So that's sort of the only non-football thing that I did was get tattoos on my body, which is so fun. So there we go. I just keep seeing it flash on the camera. But um while I was there, I also went to 4 games, and as much as I would love to go into full ridiculous detail about every single one because they were each special for very, very specific reasons, I'm not going to do that because I don't actually think that would be that interesting for you guys. I think it's kind of a had to be there situation, but there are some highlights that I want to talk about. So obviously I'm going to talk about some of these games or a few highlights from them because why not? This is our home ground. I get to talk about whatever I want, and this is sort of my experience of going to those games, and I thought it was really fun. And so I'm going to share it, and hopefully it will encourage those of you who don't normally go to a game or can't always get to a game to book the trip to do the thing because it was truly an incredible week. The 4 games that I went to were Arsenal versus Aston Villa on the Sunday, which was the fourth round of the FA Cup. They played at Boreham Wood. The second game I went to was Arsenal versus Man United, which was the semifinal of the Subway Cup. also at Boreham Wood. The third game that I went to was Chelsea versus Arsenal at Stamford Bridge on the Saturday, and that was absolutely unreal for so many different reasons. And then the last game that I went to was London City Lionesses versus Man City at Hayes Lane Copperjack Community Stadium. I think it was the Lionesses, London City Lionesses home ground. And yeah, like I said, each one of them was really special for a different reason. So we'll talk about it. The Villa and United games, like I said, were both at Boreham Wood, which is a very small stadium. And when I say a very small stadium, I don't know that people in the US can quite comprehend how small this stadium was. Boreham Wood holds like 3 to 4,000 people. I didn't actually Google the number, but it's like less than 4,000 people, I think. It genuinely feels like you are at like a children's soccer game on a weekend. Like it's so small. The players are so close to you. And it's just absolutely astonishing to me as somebody who has really only ever watched sports in the US, or obviously I went to the Euros, like I talk about all the time. Those were in like big stadiums, like the smallest stadium held like 25,000 people. That's still a pretty big stadium. In the US, the smallest NWSL stadiums still hold like 10,000-ish people. And I can't explain to you the fact that like Katie McCabe was taking throw-ins 10 feet from me. Like if I would have been standing up and walking to go to the bathroom or something, I could have reached out and touched her. You wouldn't, obviously, but like you could. And so I just think it's so crazy for those of us who have only really been to games in the US to sort of imagine what this is like. And then I was there, and not only can you hear everything, every single thing they're saying to each other, to their opponents, to the ref, you can hear like the thud of the ball when they kick it, when they're passing, shooting, whatever. Like, I just couldn't believe it. I was literally in awe. The first day that I was there, my jaw was just on the floor the entire time. Because what do you mean these absolutely phenomenal world-class players, players who have won World Cups, won the Euros, played in all of these like incredible tournaments, freaking champions of Europe, Champions League winners are playing in this stadium. And I'm just that close to them. And I don't know, I just don't think that my English friends were quite comprehending how like mind-boggling it was to me, because they haven't watched games in the US. Like I don't think that they have this like scale comparison that I had. They're like, yeah, they're really close. Like we get it, but they're there every week. I don't know. It was just like mind-boggling to me. Anyways, enough about those two games. I will say the Sunday game was a bit more enjoyable. A, they won. They beat Aston Villa 2-0. And B, the weather was much better. It was still cold, but on the Wednesday night it was cold and raining. So that wasn't lovely. And they lost. They lost 1-0 in the semifinal to Man United. Olivia Smith got a red card in the like 65th minute or something like that. So not great. Didn't love that. But I got to be there with my friends who I never get to see. And so all around 10 out of 10 vibe, would highly suggest. The next game, the Chelsea game at Stamford Bridge, was just unbelievable. If you're not aware, Stamford Bridge is the big stadium that the men always play in and the women sometimes play in for Chelsea. I don't actually know how many people that stadium seats. If I had to guess, there were supposedly like 30,000 people there. I think they had sold a record number of tickets for the game. I think they had sold like 33,000 tickets. In the stadium, none of us ever saw them do like an official crowd number. So I'm not sure how many people were there. I have heard that people were saying that it was roughly 30,000 people. Not sure if that's a record for them or not. But the stadium was not like full. I'd bet the stadium holds like 40 to 45,000 people. This is something that you can Google if you're really curious about it. But it was quite full. And it was just so fun and so special for a couple of reasons. First of all, Arsenal won, which is why I have my jersey on. Arsenal did beat Chelsea over the weekend, it was a London derby. It's always for bragging rights. Katie McCabe talked about this in her post-match interview that, Chelsea's a top side, Arsenal's a top side. So really these derby games are for bragging rights. Of course, it's all for league and trying to qualify for Champions League and title race and all of those things. Yes. But it's also for bragging rights. And so many of these players are such good friends. Like they all know each other. They were so nice to each other during the game. And that's what's crazy to me because on TV, you don't get to see all the things that are happening kind of like off the ball. So, say somebody goes in for like a hard tackle, wins the ball gets passed. The two players, one Arsenal, one Chelsea, like got up together and patted each other on the back and then kept going. Like you don't see that stuff on TV, but it was happening the whole game. And so just the level of respect beyond just normal sportsmanship, they truly felt like they were respecting each other was really lovely to see, especially in a game that is so tense. The tensions were so high and it went into halftime and it was still 0-0. There was everything still left to gain. It's not like it was like a blow away from the beginning or anything. But then come second half, the Arsenal away end was on like one side and around the corner. I was sat in like the very edge of the Arsenal section, so I could just see all of the Arsenal fans around the curve. And there were so many. I think they were allotted 4,000 tickets, and I think it sold out or very close to sold out. It was full. And the Arsenal fans were so loud the whole game, chanting, singing, cheering. And it just felt really special, I think, because at Bournemouth, there are like 4,000 total people in the whole stadium. And so it's just like not as loud. It wasn't as concentrated, right? Everybody spread out around the pitch. And it just at Stamford Bridge was so concentrated. Everybody was together and everybody like knew what was at stake. And I honestly don't think that many people thought Arsenal was actually going to win. I think everyone assumed Chelsea would win. My score prediction was 2-1 to Arsenal, but I did say that was a heart pick, not necessarily a head pick. I also did say that Mariana Caldente was due for a goal, and she did score. So I don't think that saying Mariana's going to score is like that big of a wild thing to say. It's not like I was like, Steph Catley's going to score. And then she did. She doesn't score that often. Mariana Caldente scores a lot of goals for us, but it had just been a while and I just felt it for her. And she did. She scored the second goal. And both goals were in the second half within like 5 minutes of each other. And they were both down right in front of all the Arsenal fans. And it was so fun to be part of that, like, English football rivalry in that moment felt really, really special because I just feel like I haven't experienced that here in the US. It was just electric, like start to finish. It was so fun. And I loved getting to be a part of it. Like, I just felt so lucky to be there. So there's that. The other thing I loved about that game was the players on the pitch individually. There were captains, vice captains, former captains of multiple countries: England, Australia, Ireland, Scotland, and the US, just to name a few. In Millie Bright, former captain of England, Steph Catley and Sam Kerr and Ellie Carpenter, all Australians who were there playing in the game. I mean, back to England, Lucy Bronze, Kira Walsh have both worn the armband recently. Ireland, Katie McCabe was there. Scotland, Erin Cuthbert was playing. The U.S. Women's National Team, Naomi Gurma was playing. Emily Fox was playing. Alyssa Thompson, like not that Foxy and Alyssa Thompson usually wear the armband, but just some of the like biggest names in international football. And that doesn't even get to the Swedish players that were there: Stina Blackstenius, Frida Maanum, Yo-Yo Ritten Kanred. And I mean, just everyone, like everyone was there. Everyone on that pitch individually has so much name recognition and talent. And just to see them all on the same pitch playing against each other with such respect for each other and also such like deep rooted, I don't want to say hatred because I don't think that that's really it, but like disgust for the other team. Like Chelsea and Arsenal do not like each other, but they were so respectful. Like it was just really, really incredible to see, I think, to watch all of these women like have all of those things existing at once felt really, really cool in a way that I wasn't expecting because I got to see all of the extras and the other things and like watching them warm up on the sidelines before they went in was like down the end where I was. And so just seeing like them reunite, see each other was really, really sweet. I think I could go through the whole like starting 11s of both teams and just be like, could you believe I saw them? I'm just beside myself. I don't know if this is even going to be interesting to listen to because I just feel like I'm in like awe of my own experience in my own life, which in some ways is a really special thing to have to be able to like reflect a little bit on the good things that you have, especially right now when things are so bad in so many ways. To be able to appreciate these special moments was really, really good. And just being there, being in the away end was so magical. The banter between the Arsenal fans and the Chelsea fans was so fun because Chelsea kept chanting that they're the champions of England because they've won the WSL like 67 times in a row. And then Arsenal being like champions of Europe, you'll never sing that. Oh, it was just so fun. And then the passion that exists within Beth Mead when she scores a goal, especially against a rival club, is so special. And she scored and she immediately like badge tapped 3 times really hard. They all ran and celebrated in front of the fans. Katie McCabe did a knee slide and then jumped on everyone. Like, oh, it was just so special. And I think this gets to this bigger idea that I think I talked about really early on in the podcast journey that like watching these women be the full spectrum of a human, competitive and fierce and passionate, but also like, I don't nice is like too, I don't know, light of a word, but still like respectful and supportive of one another and their opponents and checking in on each other. It was really just everything I could have wanted. And so, yeah, the vibe was just so good. So, so good. And then finally, the last game that I went to was London City Lionesses versus Man City. Because we beat Chelsea, Arsenal got all 3 points, making Chelsea and Arsenal only 1 point different in the league. Chelsea has 27 points and Arsenal has 26 points, but Man City already had 33. So they were 6 points clear going into the weekend. They remained 6 points clear because Chelsea lost. So playing London City Lionesses, they had the opportunity to go 9 points clear, top of the table. So it was a really exciting game and a lot on the line there for City in terms of the title race. This game was in another really small stadium. They had a record crowd on the day that I was there, which was 3,418 people in attendance. And so it was really interesting because I had the first 2 games in a small stadium. That was just absolutely shocking to me. And then to go to the big stadium and have like 30,000 people there, to then go back to a small stadium of roughly 3,500 people for a game in the same league was just super interesting to me. Anyways, the London City Man City game was special for a lot of reasons. In the end, Man City did win 2-1, so they did go 9 points clear. Seems like that's probably title race done and dusted, though they still do have to play all 3 big teams. So they have to play United, Chelsea, and Arsenal. So we'll see what happens there. But one of the really cool things that happened while I was there was Sam Coffey made her WSL debut, which I booked this trip far before I had any idea that Sam Coffey was going to be going to the WSL. And then we decided we were going to the London City game well before Sam Coffey even signed for Man City. So it was just this like really cool coincidence that I got to be there to see her debut, and she fit in lovely. She already was like talking and laughing with many of the girls on the team. Very cute moments that I saw with Grace Clinton, with Sydney Lohman, with Viv Miedema after the game was very, very sweet. So that was really fun and special. Welcome to the WSL, Sam Coffey. And then during this game, there were plenty of legends playing. We all know that London City, with Michelle Kang as their owner, has invested a ton and has gotten some really big names. And then Man City is one of the best teams in England, if not in Europe, I would argue, even though they're not in Champions League this season. So I got to see, these are just some of the people I got to see play. Danielle Vanderdonk, she is finally back from injury. This is, I think, only like her second appearance for them that I got to see. Bunny Shaw, she's unbelievable and she's so tall. Like her presence just being on the pitch was really, really impressive. Kosovare Asllani, who is in the like leadership group for Sweden. Viv Miedema, obviously in the leadership group for the Netherlands. Their top goal scorer, I think maybe of all time. I know for sure of all time on the women's side. I don't know about the men. Lauren Hemp, Alex Greenwood, both Lionesses, as previously mentioned, Sam Coffey, Jana Fernandez, who plays for Spain, who went to London City from Barcelona. This will be important in a moment. Kirsten Kasperai of the Netherlands, Yui Hasegawa from Japan, and so many others. Several young Lionesses on London City Lionesses, and just other really fantastic players for City as well. Jade Rose, the Canadian who plays in their defensive line, I was really impressed with her. It was so good. They were all so good. And then, as if what was going on the pitch wasn't good enough, I'm sure you saw it all over your social media. But if you didn't, there were some very prominent names in the crowd as well. Beth Mead was there, famously Viv Miedema's girlfriend. So that's not overly surprising that she was there. Sitting next to Marina Caldente, her teammate who plays for Spain, used to play for Barcelona. Ellie Carpenter, famously Danielle Van de Donk's wife. Alyssa Thompson, who it seems like has become very close with Ellie Carpenter. So it seems like they just came together. Maybe she was there for Sam Coffey. Who knows? Patrick Guijarro, who plays for Spain and Barcelona. And then Alexia Putellas, who famously is the captain of Barcelona and in the captaincy group for Spain, were all in attendance and they were all sitting like kind of together. Beth and Mariana were sitting with Patry and Alexia behind them. And then Ellie and Alyssa were a bit off from them. Sure, they were still a little bit disappointed about the result from the day before, but what can you do? But just the aura of Alexia Putellas being in that really small stadium, watching the same game as me, essentially like spending her Sunday the same way that I was, just felt kind of silly for some reason. She is two-time Ballon d'Or winner, if you don't know, and she just is incredible. I had actually just watched her documentary. She has a three-part documentary that I can't seem to find access to in the US, but I watched it with Laura while we were over there because you can get it, I think, on like BBC or something. I don't know. Contact Laura Smith for all inquiries about that. But we had like just watched that documentary, and so we were talking a lot about like her aura, her impact on the game, like all of these things. And then she was just there. And I was like, what is going on? But yeah, it was really cool. Cool that she was there. It went like crazy online because it is the January transfer window. Alexia's contract is up in the summer and she is in current contract negotiations with Barcelona. I think her agent just had recently shared that Barcelona had offered her a contract, but she rejected it because they weren't going to pay her enough. So they're still in negotiations. I saw it go crazy on the internet that like she had signed a pre-contract while she was there with London City. I cannot imagine Alexia Putellas going to a club where there's no Champions League football. I can hardly imagine her leaving Barcelona, but because of their current financial situation, I think right now it's more of a realistic possibility than ever. Not that I think it's actually ever going to happen, but it might. But I cannot see her going to a club that's not playing Champions League football. Like, and maybe there could be draw to London City for other reasons, like the project they're building, like building a team, all of that. But she's 31, almost 32. I just can't see her wanting to take that step in her career right now. I've been wrong before, but I don't think that's why she was there. I think she and Patry were both there to see there were three Spanish players who play for London City, and I think that's why they were there. Notably, though, Barcelona did win the Super Cup, their like League Cup, the night before, and Alexia and Patry, there are pictures of both of them that they posted of them out partying the night before. So I did think it was funny that I'm like, did she just like hop on a plane from the celebrations? Anyways, enough talking about that. I think that wraps up all that I have to say about the games that I went to. I think just if you can go, go. It's so fun. It's different in England and it's lovely. I loved every moment of being at all of these games. It's just such a different experience than watching games in the US. Not that the US games don't have also really meaningful things to offer, but there's that. There are two other things that I did when I was in the Londonish area that I want to talk about because they were football related. I did tours of Emirates Stadium, the home of Arsenal men and women, as we talked about, and Wembley Stadium, which is the home of English football. So the first tour that we did was the Emirates tour, and it was a self-guided situation with a media tablet that you just hung around your neck, headphone, and it had someone sort of speaking to you in specific areas. And what I really appreciated about that was it was clear that they were intentionally representing the women Arsenal women have only had Emirates Stadium as their home ground since like the 24-25 season, but the women's team and its history were really, really well highlighted. I felt like it wasn't an afterthought where they were like, oh yeah, and the women's team. Like it seemed really well integrated. Even right at the beginning, one of the first places you go in, there's a bus of important men, like the first president of Arsenal Football Club or whatever it was. And then after they talked about who each of that was, they said, we recognize that these are all men, but there have been so many incredible women who have given so much to this club and really, really influenced where we are now. And I just thought that that was really nice to have in there. Again, not that it was like an afterthought, but to just acknowledge that, yes, these are busts of men, because unfortunately, that's the reality of the history is that women weren't involved at that time, but there have been many very influential women as well, and that's not glossed on them. I do think that it does help that the women's team are reigning European champions. So I do think that was like, helpful bit to brag about there, highlighting the women and all of that. There were two spots on the tour that they had that you would stop and take pictures where they put like a green screen behind you and all that. And then they want you to buy them at the end. But one of them was with two women's trophies that the team currently holds from this past season, which are the UEFA Women's Champions League, obviously, and then the Ballon d'Or Women's Club of the Year. And so they had them next to each other, and that there were only two spots to take pictures on the whole tour that like they took them like professionally and then wanted you to buy. And so I just thought it was really cool that one of them was just with the women's stuff. And there was a huge picture of the women lifting the trophy right outside of it. The thing about the Champions League trophy that I thought was so interesting that I just didn't expect was, how they tie like ribbons on it in the color of the team who won? The ribbons were dirty. And like, I don't know why it shocked me so much, but what it really did for me was like humanize that trophy and like really solidify that these were like it sounds so silly to say, like real people who won this trophy because that trophy is the same one that we saw in all the social media posts sitting on the changing room floor while Katie McCabe is like doing a like penguin slide on like alcohol and champagne that they had sprayed. So obviously that got on the ribbons and the girls brought it to so many celebrations where there were lots of drinks flowing and of course the trophy ribbons got dirty. But I just didn't even think of that. And it's like these little details that just humanized and brought me right back to where I was when I like saw all these social media posts and just was like living in this celebratory my team just won the Champions League kind of situation. So I just really thought that was so interesting and it's such a small thing that just like smacked me in the face. I was like the ribbons are dirty. But it's like, yeah, they're dirty because they celebrated so big. And of course, they have the trophy like shined. There's no fingerprints on it, any of that. Obviously, there have been plenty of those. But I loved that little detail about it because it made it really feel like this is the real one that they celebrated with. And obviously, those things are true, but then it just like smacks you in the face a little bit. And then the other thing that they did that I really, really love just to hit home this like women were not an afterthought part was that in the section where you go into the home dressing room, changing room, locker room, whatever you want to call it, they have the jerseys hanging in the lockers of their players. And it was alternated every other one with a men's shirt and a women's shirt which I really, really liked because it wasn't all of the men's shirts are in the actual lockers and the women's are like on the side. It was truly, this is the home of the men and the women. And so they're both in the back where they would be on a game day. And I just thought that was really, really fun and well done and felt intentional um, and just special because it is both of their homes. It's not one team's home and the other team just is there. It was like, no, these are where our teams sit. And so I really, really appreciated that. And overall, I just think they did a great job of representing the women's team. And I really enjoyed doing the tour. So if you're ever considering doing the Emirates Stadium tour, I would highly suggest it. I thought it was really well done. It took us like an hour to do it. So there's that. When it came to the Wembley tour, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. I had never been to Wembley before, so I've never seen a full or anything other than completely empty Wembley. But obviously, I know that it's one of the most iconic stadiums in the world, certainly one of the most iconic soccer stadiums in the world, home of English football, where the women won the Euros in 2022, where the United States women's soccer team won the 2012 Olympics. Some exciting events have happened there. That's just on the women's side. But I also know that the FA Cup final for both men and women is played there every year. And then there's some game or games that are played there every season that's like a promotional playoff. Those are played at Wembley, like those kinds of things. But I just know that there have been a lot of men's games played there over the years. And so I was a little curious about what the distribution of men's to women's would be because historically England hasn't been great about the women, considering they did ban it for like 50 years, women playing the sport. But you like show them your tickets or whatever, and you walk in, and there's a little self-guided part before you go wait upstairs to do the part that is guided actually in the stadium. But it's sort of almost like a museum thing below. And the first thing when you walked in is just bam, Lionesses, like a big thing. It has multiple of the trophies that Serena has won post Euros. It has a couple of jerseys, like just some really cool bits and stuff there from the girls, which I really, really liked. Lots of history about the stadium itself. And then obviously they allowed the men a little. No, there's some men's history. You know, they won the World Cup in 1966, I think. And there was a whole thing about how the trophy got stolen and some like dog found it or something or other. And then as you went upstairs, the restaurant that is in Wembley is called the Three Lions, which is what the men's team is called. And that's been there for I don't know how long period of time. But like 2 weeks before we did the tour, so probably right at the start of 2026, they opened a cafe in Wembley and it is called the Lioness, which is the name of the women's team, which I thought was really good because clearly they're making an effort to make the women more integrated. And so we stopped and Laura grabbed a coffee and I grabbed a Pepsi Max. It had a Leah Williamson face on it because it was still one of the ones from the Euros, which I really liked because I never saw one of those because they didn't have them in Switzerland, or I never saw one in Switzerland. I don't know. Anyways, but the person that was working at the cafe was so lovely and really seemed to know quite a bit about the women's team and spoke to my friend Laura about it for several minutes. He talked a lot about interactions that he's had with Serena and how lovely she is, and that was really cool. So, as the tour went on, the tour guide proceeded to remind everyone that the Lionesses are the two-time European champions back to back, and that they are the only team who ever wins anything for England, which was pretty funny because the men have just gone trophyless for a very long time. They did make it to the final of the Euros, I think, in 2024. But it was just like funny the way that he was saying it. It was very much bantery, but like cool also that he like kept bringing it up, kept reminding everyone that the women had won, and it just was like a little bit of a nod to how far the game had come. We went in the England dressing room and it was not as 50-50 as the Emirates. It wasn't terrible, but it did have all of the men's shirts were in the back of the lockers and the women's shirts were hanging on like a hook on one of the like sides of it. And I was annoyed about it. Not like properly annoyed, but just like it wasn't 50-50. But what Laura did point out was when we first walked in and you like walked in and to the right was just like a wall and to the left was the horseshoe shaped changing area with the lockers and stuff. The women's shirts were like facing us, so all you saw were the women's numbers, and then as you looked to the other side, then you could see the open lockers and the men's jerseys. But it was cool. They had everyone of the Euros squad there and a couple of them were signed. They had Leah's hanging up. It was signed and it had a captain's armband, rainbow captain's armband on it, which was really special. And then as you went around, there were two like champions 25 with the gold writing on it that were signed by Serena. One was like two times champion, Serena. And then, of course, and this just made me giggle if you pay attention at all to the role that Jill Scott has continued to play with the England team. They had a Jill Scott jersey hanging up in there that she had signed. And it's just so silly to me because, like, of course, it's going to be like the current England squad plus Jill. Jill is always around. I think it's fabulous. The girls seem to love it. She seemed to be a huge support for them in Switzerland, being around all the things. They've all talked really, really highly about it. Obviously, make some jokes, but it was just, I was like, of course, there's Jill. But my favorite part of the tour, there were two things that I loved. One, the first was when you went into the press conference room, the people that I was with, we knew what had happened in that room. Obviously, lots of things have happened in that room over the years, but the very iconic Serena Wiegmann post Euros 22 win press conference in which all the girls came in playing the It's Coming Home song happened in there. She was doing a press conference. They came in with a speaker just blaring, It's coming home, it's coming, that song, which found out during the tour that Serena hated that song and would not let them play it during the tournament. She's like, if you win, then you can play it. We're not playing it beforehand. So apparently, Laura shared this with me. Somebody had said in an interview, I think it was Leah said in an interview that Jill was like, girls, let's go. So they went in and they danced behind Serena in the press conference. And then Mary Earps got on the table and was dancing on the table. And so we, of course, went and took a picture sitting behind it, the press conference table. And, they've said in interviews since many of the girls, like, the table's not that thick. So the fact that she stood on it, she like really trusted it. And so it was like probably 2 inches thick. Like it wasn't that thick. And we were like, dang, this is where Mary was dancing. It was so cool. And the guide made sure to tell everyone about it. And then we had already noticed, I don't know if everyone else in the room had noticed, there were two TVs in the press conference room and they had a 10 to 15-second clip of that just playing on repeat over and over again. We clocked it as soon as we walked in the room. We were like, oh my gosh, this is the spot where this super iconic moment happened. But it was just so fun. And so I really, really enjoyed that. Felt like the whole press conference room was about the Euros 2022 because they didn't mention a single thing outside of 24 or 25 other than that Euros press conference, which I just thought was really fun and cute. So that was really, really good. And then the last thing that I want to say about this tour is about the really special people that I did it with. I went on this tour with Laura Smith, who I've talked about multiple times already on this episode. She's been on multiple episodes. You all know Laura. She is one of my best friends who you're all familiar with by now. Meg, another podcast guest, our Australian friend who did the neurodivergence episode with me. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen. It's so good. She was in London. And then also our friend Lainey, who is from Germany, who is someone that I also met at the Euros in Switzerland and has become a good friend, was with us. So the four of us did the tour. So when we arrived and we're like scanning our tickets, they asked us where we were from. I think they were expecting us to all say that we were from the same place, but Laura was like, "Oh, we're from England, the US, Australia, and Germany." And they were like, "What?" And she was like, "Yeah, we all met at the Euros in Switzerland this summer." And then that staff member told basically every other staff member in the place. And then as we went to each of the different areas of the tour, multiple people asked us about it. When we went up to the cafe, the guy was like, "Oh, you guys are the ones from everywhere who met at the Women's Euros." We were like, "Yeah, that's us." And it just kept coming up. And it really, really reminded me what a special group of friends I have. And honestly, what an impact women's soccer, women's football has had on my life. And it sounds so silly to say because if you haven't experienced it, you don't get it. But it's just so amazing to me that the four of us from four different countries, three different continents, all met at this women's soccer tournament in Europe and became and stayed friends. Like it's been 6 months since we last all were together. It would have been really easy for us to be like, yeah, that was like one fun thing that we did, moving on, like a blip in each other's radar. But the fact that we have stayed friends is something that I don't ever want to take for granted. I don't want to take for granted the beauty of the people around me, the opportunities I've created for myself by sending a message online, saying hello, and starting a conversation in person. And through doing these things, I have found the best community. And I left England with such a sense of gratitude for my life and the people in it. The Wembley tour really highlighted it, but throughout the week that I was there, every game that I went to, I didn't go with just Laura. We went with several of our other friends. And I feel so lucky to have made such incredible connections and have this community that is so supportive. And we all do such vastly different things, and we're all from vastly different places, and we have such different life experiences, and yet we all find ourselves doing the same silly things on Sunday, going to watch our team, enjoying each other, going for a drink after, sharing a meal. Like it's just so special to me. And this trip really, really reminded me of why I love the women's soccer community so much, why I started making this podcast to begin with, and why I just have this sense of like home when it comes to women's soccer. And so I don't even know how else to say it, but I love this part of my life. I love getting to talk about it on this podcast. I want to continue sharing it with people because I just want other people who are looking for something like this to be able to find it too. And maybe women's soccer isn't the place where you find it, but like send the message, send an email, say hi to someone at an event that you really enjoy and like make friends, make the connections because it genuinely will change your life. And that just feels so like silly to say, but it's true. It's just the truth for me. So I'm really ending on a sappy note here, which, if you know me, actually isn't that surprising at all. After a trip like that, I get really, really sentimental at the end of things. So yeah, I love my life. I love my people. And I'm so thankful for them because they really do give me something that I've never been able to find anywhere else. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I have for today. There will be some really exciting things to come on the pod this year, I hope. So stick with us. Like I said, I really do want to be intentional about trying to get new guests and new people and talk about different things and grow this community as well. So on that note, if you would like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend. It sounds silly to ask for all these things, but that really is how we grow this community. Please, I'm on social media as well, mostly posting on Instagram because the TikTok world is crazy right now with it being taken over by the US and it's just a mess. So I'm mostly on Instagram and I do post some story stuff and I'm thinking about ways to grow that. So we are at our homeground pod on Instagram. We're on Spotify and YouTube, whichever one you're not watching on, go to the other one and subscribe and follow and whatever. Thank you for being here and for being a part of this silly little thing that I'm doing and hopefully becoming less of a silly little thing or maybe not. I just love it. So I'll keep doing it for whatever it is. But anyway, thanks for being here. Hope you have a great week and I'll see you next time.